All right, so this is the Top 5 Weekly. This is the latest episode of the show where myself and my panelists, we run down our top 5, whatever topic it is, whether it be actors, actresses, directors, just a generic topic or whatever. And this week, because of Atomic Blonde, we are running down our top 5 Charlize Theron films. So let me introduce my panelists, starting with Andrew.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be back this week. We are talking about Charlize Theron, and I hope we will probably be also talking about Atomic Blonde, her newest film, and kind of how she is having a new phase of her career where she's becoming a female action star, which is an interesting new wrinkle in her already very long filmography.
And Mr. Billy Pollihan.
Well, there you go. My name is Billy Pollihan. Hi. I've been on the show a couple times. I've known Skip for a while, and yeah, I'm very interested in Charlize Theron's career, and I'm also very happy to talk about some gems that I discovered before getting on the show.
Okay. And Jeff.
Yeah, I'm Jeff, just a fellow film nerd. I've been on the show a couple times, happy to be back on, and looking forward to talking about Atomic Blonde and top 5 Charlize Theron movies of mine. Yeah, happy to be here.
All right, so with that being said, let's get this show on the road. Andrew, starting with you, what is your number 5 Charlize Theron film?
My number 5 is a film I saw as recently as last night, and I talked about it a little bit with Dan before the show, and that is The Cider House Rules, which is a film starring a very young Tobey Maguire and a very young Charlize Theron, and of course the veteran presence Michael Caine, who won an Oscar for this film. This film is also based on a novel of the same name, and it is set in 1940s Maine, and Tobey Maguire is this young man who has spent his whole life living in an orphanage, and he's kind of become settled there, but he wants to go out into the world and kind of just discover life in a different way. He wants to explore things differently, and he ends up meeting the Charlize Theron character, and they have a bit of a love affair, if you will. She's already entangled with someone else, actually a character played by a young Paul Rudd in this film. It's an interesting film previewing a lot of up and coming actors of the 1990s, and she is wonderful in this film. It is, I think, right before people started really recognizing her in a big way. She was in a few films in the 90s, but this one is one of her most famous or most promising, or one of her best roles. And I decided to put this one at number 5 just because it was new to me and I rather did enjoy the movie. I'm not sure if it should have gotten all of the Oscar and critical praise that it got, but in retrospect, it's a solid movie.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I absolutely love The Cider House Rules. We're going to talk about that before the show's over again. So now we're up to Billy. What's your number 5, Billy?
Okay, I'm going to go with one that I had no idea Charlize Theron was actually in this movie. And she's actually not one of the most memorable parts, but it's The Devil's Advocate. I totally forgot that Charlize Theron was in this movie, but I looked up her filmography. I saw it. It's one of her earliest roles. And like we all know that it's Al Pacino and Keanu Reeves. And, well, Al Pacino's the devil. But Charlize Theron, she didn't really give like a breakthrough performance or anything, but she proved that she was a very capable actress, and that she was able to hold her own with Keanu, and did good with what she did. And also, just the film is awesome. Go watch The Devil's Advocate if you want to see one of the best interpretations of the devil, and just a all around entertaining movie. Watch this movie. This is the untapped potential of Charlize and later down in my list, we will get into where she really blossomed into a very good actress.
Yeah, The Devil's Advocate, great film. I mean, you love it when Al Pacino gets to act off of some of these other great actors. That's when he's usually at the top of his game. And she has a cameo role, kind of a smallish role in the film as well. Absolutely, Billy. All right, Jeff, you're up. Number 5.
You know, I'm actually ashamed to say I haven't seen Cider House Rules. It's been on my watch list for a while, so I'm glad it was mentioned already. I'll definitely get around to that. My number 5 is actually a film I detested the first time I saw it, and I guess in a way I still kind of hate it, but I think you're not supposed to like it because it's Jason Reitman's Young Adult, and it was the second view I realized how great of a performance it is from her to play a character so disillusioned, unlikable. She plays this young adult ghostwriter who goes back to her hometown and tries to hook up with her old boyfriend, played by Patrick Wilson, who's happily married and has just had a baby, and it gets really complicated. And I just thought her performance was fearless, playing someone so unlikable and alcoholic, just completely disillusioned. It's really a strong performance from her. I don't think she got a lot of credit for, and I think it deserves to be seen just for her performance alone. Like I said, it's pretty much unlikable. She's unlikable in it. That's kind of the point. You're not really supposed to like her, but I really admired her performance in that because she is so freaking unlikable in it. So that is my number 5, Jason Reitman's Young Adult.
Yeah, she's definitely young. She's definitely unlikable, and if you can't get the fact that she's just a miserable person, you just don't get the movie in a whole. And her whole arc throughout the movie is nothing but some nasty stuff that she's doing. But great choice. I think that was Diablo Cody's follow-up to Juno, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe Jennifer's Body I could be wrong about that. Jennifer's Body might have came before, but it is her second collaboration with Jason Reitman since Juno. But yeah, Diablo Cody and that script and that performance from Charlize, it's really it's just I admired it for what it was, and like you said, just how downright and nasty she is. It's a really cold performance from her, and I think it's really worth checking out. So,
absolutely agree. All right, so my number 5 is actually the very first time I ever saw Charlize Theron in a film, and it was a damn good film. She has a smallish role, but you could tell in this kind of like she's like a hitman or an assassin type of character, where she's like the partner of James Spader. And her character's name is where is it? It's right here. It's Helga Spelgen. Her name of her character in 2 Days in the Valley is called Helga Spelgen, and she plays the Swedish woman, and she's like the assistant to James Spader's kind of like hitman character. But the key scene where she gets in a knockout, drag out fight with Terry Hatcher in the film, and Terry Hatcher is like this Olympic skier, and there's this whole thing involving a hitman on her she's trying to get a hit, put out a hit on her ex-husband, and then you get Danny Aiello who's in the film, and it's just a crazy film that's set in Los Angeles, and there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on. But Charlize Theron, what you notice her in this film, you notice that she's going to be an actress that you're going to see in future films. And so with the name of Helga Spelgen, I mean, what a name for a character. It's one of the all-time awful, awful names for a character. And Charlize Theron is drop-dead gorgeous in the film because she's playing a Swedish woman. And so I figured, you know what? This is the first time I ever saw her, and I remember this movie today. And it's a good movie. It really is a good movie with crazy performances from James Spader and Danny Aiello. So yeah, 2 Days in the Valley is my number 5. Going back to Andrew, the number 4.
My number 4 is the film called In the Valley of Ella, starring, of course, Charlize Theron, but also starring Tommy Lee Jones as well. And this film is about a father who's trying to find out what happened to his son after his son returned from serving in Iraq, I believe. And it kind of, his son goes missing, and Charlize Theron plays the detective, and the father and she kind of team up and try to find out what happened to his son. What is interesting about this movie is that it came out during the same year as No Country for Old Men, and it kind of has that same vibe to it. It's rather bleak, it's rather dark. Coincidentally, Josh Brolin's also in this film, as well as Tommy Lee Jones, and they were also in No Country for Old Men. But what is interesting about this film is kind of how dark it is and how Charlize Theron plays the character very, very well. Kind of somebody who has to go through all kind of investigations and reveal certain revelations. This film was also directed by Paul Haggis. I believe this was his follow-up to Crash, which of course won Best Picture controversially a few years earlier. And this is one of a few films that he's actually directed. He hasn't done much since, but this is one of his films. So I watched this for the first time, I want to say last year or maybe the year before, and I found myself believing it to be a rather underrated movie. I think it's rather overlooked because it came out in the same year as No Country for Old Men. And I also think that it's a performance by Charlize Theron that gets not mentioned very often, so I thought I would bring it up here on the show.
Yeah, very good choice, Andrew. Very good choice. Billy, what's your number 4?
Okay, so my number 4 is going to be, it's not technically a good movie, and I swear the rest of the 3 are going to be like really, really solid films, but I picked Reindeer Games. It's with Ben Affleck and Charlize Theron. Ben Affleck killed a prisoner out and has broken out of prison, and it's a whole it's a whole cat and mouse game with Ben Affleck and Gary Sinise, who's in the movie. Charlize Theron plays Gary Sinise's girlfriend, and she is awesome. You don't know what her end game is. You know there's something up with her, and it's also just a damn fun, entertaining film. But it can be very guilty pleasure. There are some really cheesy scenes, but Charlie's really just she knocks it out of the park, and she is very, very entertaining.
Yeah, that is a fun movie. I mean, you can't take Reindeer Games seriously. If you do, that you don't get the point of it. It's not meant to be taken as some kind of great piece of artwork. You know, it is a fun, action, kind of crazy ride. All right, Jeff, what is your number 4?
My number 4 probably might be on some of your guys' list. My number 4 is Prometheus. It's a movie that I actually like more than others. I think it's a lot better than the recent Alien Covenant. But Prometheus, I specifically love it for Charlize Theron's performance, and again for the same reason I love Young Adult. Every time she was on screen in that movie, my eyes were fixed on her because she plays such a cold character. You know, plays a bitch really well. Like I said, it's like the Mark Wahlberg in Departed thing. Every time it's the same thing with her in Prometheus. My eyes were just on her. She's such a cold fucking bitch in that movie, and I think she plays that role so well and adds so much intrigue to the movie. And it was just such a cool character from her. And I remember the first time seeing it, just one of the first things I said when I got up, besides Fassbender's performance, was Charlize. I just thought she was incredible in it. And also want to mention Reindeer Games and In the Valley of Allah are in my honorable mentions. I think In the Valley of Allah is an incredible choice, Andrew, and I agree it's really underrated. It's a really good performance from Tommy Lee and Charlize. But number 4 on mine, yeah, it's going to be Prometheus, and specifically because of the cold bitch Charlize Theron plays in it.
Yeah, she is capable of playing a really bitchy character if she's got the right script and the right story. She can really portray that kind of character very well, and she was nasty in Prometheus, and I absolutely like that film as well. Jeff, I'm surprised it gets so much hate from people. I think it's a fantastic film. It's way better than Alien Covenant, in my opinion. Way better than Alien Covenant, in my opinion. But that's another whole ball of wax. My number 4 is actually the same as Andrew's number 4. In the Valley of Ella, 2004, directed by Paul Haggis, stars Charlize Theron as Emily Sanderson, and she has to go and get Tommy Lee Jones to help her do this investigation. It's got Susan Sarandon in there. It's got Josh Brolin, James Franco. It really is a good film, and it's a very underrated film, like Andrew said. And it's got a really good mystery involving like war kinds of things. What sometimes the things that happen to these people, the things that they get into when they go to places like Iraq and Afghanistan and so forth. And you don't know what the heck kind of world. It's like, not only is it a third world, it's literally a third world, because they're going over there and they're getting involved in things that you don't know what that's going to turn their life into when they come back home and stuff. And you don't even know if they make enemies while they're over there, because they're around the world. They're in another world, literally. So you don't know the kinds of things that are going on in these countries when these men are going off to war and stuff. Then they come back here, and you don't know if they made enemies, if they made friends, or if they don't want to be around people because of post-traumatic stress or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, in the Valley of Ella, Paul Haggis was on a roll there for a while. And then all of a sudden, we just stopped seeing Paul Haggis movies or scripts. He was writing movies. He was directing them. He had a good little run there, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he just stopped, or we just haven't seen him that much lately. I don't know if he went to TV or what, but I liked some of his scripts that were directed by other people, and then obviously Crash and In the Valley of Ella are really great films. So, yeah, this Charlize Theron character is a great character. It shows her range where she's not doing the bitchy thing. She's not doing the action thing. She's doing more of a dramatic character, and that shows. It's when she was doing that character, you could see that she was doing more of a dramatic work, and it's changing her career. She was changing her career. Some of these makes all our great actors and actresses where they can transcend and they do all these different things. And that was something different she hadn't done before. So that's why I had it exactly the same as Andrew, the Valley of Ella. All right. Anybody on the panel that's seen Atomic Blonde? We can give our we think of Atomic Blonde. Starting with Andrew. Somebody who's got their sound. Something with the echo. Could we do this? No.
I don't know. But did you ask what I thought of Atomic Blonde?
Yeah, I'm asking all. Start with Andy.
Oh, okay. For Atomic Blonde, I like. It's very controversial, divisive of what people were expecting. People were expecting an all-out action film, and what we ended up getting was kind of a more old-school style thriller. We ended up getting a film that is part Cold War spy thriller, something like Spy Who Came In From the Cold, or Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, or something like that. But we also got a rather James Bond / Mission Impossible plot, and we ended up also including the action sequences from John Wick. So you have all of these different meshes of different things within the spy genre, and the balance wasn't quite there for all of it, but I found myself readily engaged in it. The action scenes, although there aren't a lot of them, when they do hit, I think they are incredible. There is one particular action scene that's probably one of the best you'll see in a movie all year. It is all done in one shot, and it is just incredible. And you can tell Charlize really gave 100% effort into making this scene as incredible as possible. It's all her doing all the stunts. And I, for one, found myself really liking this movie overall. It does have some plot pacing issues. It does feel a little bit too long. I wish it was tighter. But I like the film, so I guess I'm in the minority.
And Billy?
Well, I thought it was all right. I mean, there is one song that is played that Inglourious Bastards did so much better. And a lot of the soundtrack was on the nose. Charlize Theron, of course, she gives a great performance. James McAvoy is just as good as you think he is. And, I mean, this film's story is hit or miss, honest to God. When it hits really well. But when it doesn't, it's kind of like, okay. The action I thought was pretty good for the most part. I mean, you can tell that these guys really trained hard. And, yeah, Charlize, again, just like Keanu and John Wick, you can tell she gave it her all, and she worked really hard for a very particular scene in the movie. And, yeah, I also enjoyed it, though. I was expecting a little more, but overall, I wouldn't call it a bad movie. I just would call it a fine movie. It's a good popcorn film, and if you're in the mood for some good action, I would definitely recommend it.
All right, Jeff? Jeff, you're muted. Can you unmute yourself? Can you hear me, Jeff? Jeff, you're muted. All right, I had to eject Jeff because something was going wrong with his feed. He was muted. He couldn't unmute himself.
I didn't know you could do that, Dan. I didn't know you had that power.
Yeah, I had to. He's got the link, so he can come back. So I really actually loved Atomic Blonde. I thought it was a fantastic film. I'll tell you what, I love the Lorraine Broughton character played by Charlize Theron. I love the Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy stuff going on with John Goodman and Toby Jones, and the music to me was like music to my ears. I loved that music in this film. It was the music I listened to as a kid growing up, the British invasion music. That the whole Cold War aspect of the film was really interesting. And, you know, we've seen James McAvoy as a villain in Split, but he really is a nasty guy in this film. And there's some realistic stuff going on because he's got an arm brace. Well, he broke his arm in Split, and they wrote the brace on his arm into the movie. And so that became a pivotal part of the movie. But Lorraine Broughton by Charlize Theron, she is just an amazing kick-ass character. And this is gonna go down as one of the great Charlize Theron performances, in my opinion. Of course, David Leitch from John Wick, and then he's going to be doing Deadpool 2 here pretty soon. So you know this guy can do action, and he was just approached for this project. This wasn't something that he was going to do next on his list of things that he was going to do. He was approached, and he got involved with it. He really enjoyed the whole aspect of the Cold War, and then the music and everything that's going on with this spy kind of thriller. but I absolutely love this film. I gave it a big C it when I did my review last week or the week before. I can't remember when I put my review out, but I really, really enjoyed Atomic Blonde a lot. All right, so going back to Andrew, we're going to your number 3.
Yes. My number 3 is the same as Jeff's number 5, I believe. And that is Young Adult, which is directed by Jason Reitman and written by Diablo Cody. Like Jeff said, it is their second collaboration together. And I am also probably one of those people who like this film a lot more than others. I think Charlize Theron's character is rather loathsome and is someone who you don't really like, and that is kind of the whole point. She is not a good person, and the film is trying to show you why. She is rather immature at times. She's delusional about, I think, her station in life. She is a ghostwriter, which I think kind of factors into her character in the sense that she feels kind of like a ghost. You know, she feels as if she is missing something, or as if she is missing in something in life, or missing out, or people just look past her because her name is not given credit in the books that she writes. You know, that's kind of the downfall of ghostwriting. You do all of the work and get none of the credit. And in this film, she does go back and she tries to get her old boyfriend back from when she was younger. And everybody's lives have moved on. Everybody's mature now. Everybody has families and has jobs and is living their own lives. And she can't come to grips with that because she hasn't reached that point of maturity yet. And she kind of gets lost via alcoholism and, you know, binge drinking and stuff like that. And I also want to say Patton Oswalt gives a great performance in this film. And it's a dramatic performance, something that is much different for him, who is always seen as a comedic actor because he is a stand-up comedian and writer and stuff like that. But he is very good. She was actually nominated for a Golden Globe for this role. A lot of people thought she may squeak in to get an Oscar nomination, but that never happened. And this film has kind of gone away. Not a lot of people talk about it. So I'm glad I'm able to actually champion it here on Top 5 Weekly, because I think it is a good film. It is a character film. The ending may not sit right with some people, but it kind of makes sense for the way this character is. So I would definitely say give it a watch, especially if you're a fan of Jason Reitman, who did Juno and Up in the Air. So give it check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I said it before. I really like the film. She's really a kind of a nasty piece of work character, and Charlize Theron's really good at that, and that's why, I mean, you see her range in all of these films. She's not doing the same thing. And all right, Billy, what is your number 3?
Okay, my number 3 is The Italian Job, the 2003 American remake of the British film of the same name, and this has an unbelievable cast. We got Mark Wahlberg, Charlize Theron, Jason Statham, Edward Norton, Mos Def, of all people, Seth Green, and Donald Sutherland. And Charlize Theron plays Stella, and she is the daughter of Donald Sutherland's character. And Donald Sutherland's character is a safecracker who likes getting hands-on and likes to physically do it, whereas she relies more on advanced technology to do it, and they constantly bicker about that. And yeah, although the main character is Mark Wahlberg, the person I was most interested in was Charlize Theron throughout the entire movie. And this is just, again, I can't really say much, but it's a heist movie, and the whole figuring out and planning of the heist is really awesome, and there's a great car chase in it as well that I would definitely recommend to anybody that likes car chases. But Charlize, there's nothing more I can say, but you just watch it yourself.
No, The remake of the is a really good. It has a lot of things going for it, and you know it takes a lot from the original. I'm sorry, I was itching my back.
You don't gotta tell me, Dan. You don't gotta tell us.
Sorry. Yeah, it has a lot going on that had the original had, but then it updated it to a newer audience, and that's why it was a fun movie. And she's really good in it. My number 3 is Andrew's number 5, The Cider House Rules. I absolutely love this film. Michael Caine was well deserving of an Oscar in this film. Tobey Maguire is phenomenal in this film. Delroy Lindo, Paul Rudd, Charlize Theron plays a character by the name of Candy Kendall, and she's basically kind of sleeping around in the film, and she's kind of like whatever way the wind blows, she goes that direction in the film. But it's her character, and she is believable as this character. But the topics of the film are very controversial topics for the time. It's abortion and what's the other topic, Andrew? God, there's 2 major topics in the
film. Abortion is one of them. I mean, it's a major topic now, but there's also an incest plot in there as well.
The 2 main topics of the film are incest and abortion, and you're dealing with slaves, and you're dealing with the 60s and the 50s or whatever time this took place. It was a really controversial kind of story, and she was not a very good character. Once again, she plays a kind of seedy character, not the nicest character, but she is believable as Candy in the film. And what can I say? I mean, this film is a phenomenal film for anybody that has not seen it. I have a message from Jeff that I will read. He left me his number 3, and it was Monster. So I will just continue to give you Jeff's picks because he cannot get back on to the show. So we're going back to number 2 with Andrew.
Well, coincidentally, my number 2 is Monster. So since Jeff is not here to talk about it, I guess I shall. This is the film that Charlize Theron has won her Oscar for, playing Eileen Wuornos, who is a character I believe we've discussed before in some show in the past, probably during our Halloween month, because this is a rather monstrous character. This woman was a serial killer who kind of killed a lot of men in Florida in the early 90s. I know Dan has talked about this before because he lives in Florida and he was there in the early 90s. And what is interesting is that Charlize Theron had applied so much makeup to make her look like Eileen Wuornos, really just an entire physical transformation, because Eileen looked completely different than Charlize Theron does. Charlize Theron comes from a modeling background. She's one of the most gorgeous women you will ever see on screen, and she really had to get a lot of makeup applied to her to really get herself in this role. Also, the film stars Christina Ricci playing her significant other, her lesbian lover, if you will, or her girlfriend in other terms. And it's a very interesting character film for both of their perspectives. But Eileen is really what the film is about. If you're not familiar with Eileen, there's a bunch of documentaries and books you can read and look at that'll give you so much information about her. And this is one of Charlize Theron's best roles. This is the one, like I said, that won her Oscar. I think that Charlize will probably get an Oscar for some role later on as well. I think she will get back there again. If Monster's any indication of her acting ability, she definitely has the ability to do that. So that is the next person in line.
Yeah, well, we'll get into talking about Monster before it's all over.
I have a feeling we will, Dan.
Billy, you're up.
Okay, so my number 2 is actually Mad Max Fury Road, and she played Furiosa. She has a metal arm. She is a mother figure of sorts in this post-apocalyptic wasteland, and she's basically she's driving a big rig across the Fury Road, and she decides to go left and take another turn. She's taken the wives of Imperator Joe, who is just like this real tyrant guy who controls water in a very ineffective way, but that's beside the point. She brings so much to a character without having to say much. And as an actor, the best actors can convey their emotions without having to say anything. And you see her when she's happy or sad or just enraged. And this movie is just a giant adrenaline trip, really. Many people say this movie does not have a story. I very much disagree. I think this is a story. Tom Hardy's great as Max. I can never pronounce his last name, so I'm not going to try it. I just call him Max. And the relationship between the two is really, really good. And when Furiosa goes to her home and she's like in the sand, she just goes, no, and all that stuff. I was like, oh, wow. Yeah. And really, it's quite gritty, but in a way where it's believable and just, yeah, Charlize, I love you. And I mean, I did not expect her to like buzz all her hair off, but for this role, it makes a lot of sense. And she looks like she belongs in a Mad Max, appropriately, in a Mad Max convention. And that arm is awesome, that metal arm. And just the filming of Fury Road, knowing that most of those explosions and car crashes were real, and that the actors most of the time on that film, they actually performed a lot of those stunts. Not all, but a lot of them really were life-threatening, and that makes that movie so much better. So yeah, Mad Max Fury Road.
Also, Jeff's number 2 was Mad Max Fury Road, and my number 2 is Mad Max Fury Road.
We did it. We got Dan to put Mad Max in the top 5 list. Steven, I know you're out there. I know you're out there somewhere. We got him.
Yeah. I mean, I love this film. Don't get me wrong. I don't hate this film. I just, on some of the other movies, topics that we were doing, I didn't like it as much as some of the other films on my thing on those specific topics. But I love the film, and one of the reasons why this film is so great is Charlize Theron. She is so amazing as Furiosa. She goes through the gambit of emotions in this film, trying to get these brides to freedom, basically, trying to get them away from the bad guy. Billy said the guy's name. I can't remember the guy's name. He's got a weird something Joe, he said. But one of the things I love about it is that she's doing a lot of this crazy stuff, action, and all this stuff's going on around her. And she's driving this truck, and she's doing like stunts within the truck and and the truck's still driving. Then you have these this is all practical. This is all real stuff that's going along around her, yet she still gives a great performance as this character. And let's talk about a standalone with this character, the Furiosa character, because people resonated with this character so much. George Miller, I mean, 30 years later, he decides to do another Mad Max movie, and it's one of the best films of the year a couple of years ago. So it tells you when you put your mind to something, you really have a passion for it. And, you know, you have Tom Hardy as Max, and Nicholas Hoult is in there. these people really put it all into this film, and it shows on screen when you're watching the film. And this is going to go down as easily one of her greatest performances, even though it's not a lot of like dialogue or anything like that. There's a lot of, like Billy said, a lot of subtlety to this performance, and she's phenomenal as the character of Furiosa. So with that being said, we're going to go to Mr. Andrew, and I have a feeling I know what Andrew's number one is.
Oh, it is. Every time on the show, I have had the ability to use Mad Max Fury Road as one of my choices. I have. And once again, it is my number one. You could have easily called this movie Furiosa, and it would have been just as appropriate or accurate to say. This film is very much a character journey for the Charlize Theron character of Furiosa. It is kind of just Mad Max is there for the ride. He's there to assist her. He's there to help her rescue these brides of Immortan Joe, who are pretty much sentenced to a life of just being his baby, the mothers that produce his heirs, his babies, essentially. And she wants them to have a much better life than just that. And this whole film is filled with some of the best practical action sequences, or just action sequences, I have ever seen done in a film before. Like both Dan and Billy have said, a lot of stunt work is used, a lot of practical explosions are used, a lot of just real life vehicles are used. They really shot this movie in the desert, so you get that incredible feeling of just being in another world, being in this dystopian future where everybody's kind of reduced back to almost caveman-like a livelihood, where you pretty much have to fight to survive. You're at the beck of whoever is in power. In this case, it is Immortan Joe. I also want to say Tom Hardy is good as Max Rokitansky, I believe is his name. And I really want to see another film in this franchise. They've talked about, like you guys have said, a Furiosa film. I know George Miller is in his 70s. I really want to see him do another one before he decides to, I guess, retire or hang it up, or if unfortunately he passes away, which will be a very sad day if he is able to produce such an amazing film at such an advanced age. I can't wait to see what he's able to do going forward. And I love this movie. I mean, I and Steven have talked about this film many times, and it is just a film that changed my perspective of what modern action can be for mainstream Hollywood. I mean, you see a lot of films that are over CGI. They're kind of generic. They're kind of bloated in every way. But this film, every single action scene is just so perfect that I can't help but constantly recommend this film to people. So before I take another hour to talk about this movie, I think we have to move on. Dan, take it away.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that we have to understand that if you go to the beginning of the show, the top 5 weekly, there is a theme within the show. There are themes within the show, and one of those themes is Mad Max Fury Road. And because of you and Steven, this is an ongoing theme. And I love the fact that Mad Max Fury Road is an ongoing theme within this show, because it shows the love of this movie, and it is a great movie. It really deserved to be nominated for an Oscar, and I was glad that it got that nomination to show the appreciation for what George Miller did for this film and what he was able to accomplish. And if you haven't seen it, there's a black and white, like a noir version of it, which is really, really cool to see everything in like a noir kind of feel. All right, Billy, what is your number one?
Yeah, I love Mad Max because it's directed by a grandpa, and he still got it. No. My number one, obviously, I believe is Andrew's number 2, and that would be Monster. It's directed by Patty Jenkins. I believe it was her directorial debut, and first time I saw this film, I did not realize it was based on a real life person, and I did not know Charlize Theron was playing her. I looked to see if I could find Charlize in there. I couldn't. She completely disappeared and transformed into Aileen. I believe her last name is Burroughs or something. And
Eileen Morse.
Yeah. And Christina Ricci's great, and it is a character study film about this woman and basically her descent into becoming a serial killer and how she justifies it. And it is a wonderful, wonderful movie. So when I learned that Patty Jenkins was going to do Wonder Woman, I knew that Wonder Woman was going to be unbelievable, because Patty Jenkins really, she does well with small films, and now she proves that she's great with big films. And they're both with women characters. And I want Patty Jenkins. She can do whatever she wants now, and that makes me so happy because of this film. If you want to see somebody completely disappear into a role, you watch this. She won the Oscar for this, like Andrew said, and it was very well deserved. Just how she plays anger and how she plays helplessness. She feels helpless a lot of the times, and sometimes even in the movie, there are times when she is helpless. There are some because Aileen was she was a prostitute, so obviously that's going to do something to you psychologically, but we didn't know the effect of it would have on somebody. It's just a great story, and if you want to see a great movie made by a great female director, watch this movie, and you will see the full range that Charlize Theron can bring to any role, and I would not put this any lower than number one. There was no chance.
Well, good choice. Very good choice, Billy. And Jeff's number one is North Country. Charlize Theron plays a character by the name of Josie Ames, and Josie Ames works in a mining facility in Minnesota, and she has to work around all these men. There's women that work with men, and the men don't like working with all these women, and she gets all kinds of sexual harassment and explicit kind of things thrown at her during this film and this character, and she ends up filing a groundbreaking sexual harassment lawsuit. That this is a true story, but once again, Charlize Theron gives a phenomenal performance in a movie, doing something different, but also uglying herself down, which she was good. She's good at doing with Furiosa and Eileen Wuornos, and so that's I feel like Jeff really loves this film, and it's a good film. I had it in my honorable mentions, but obviously he could express how much he loved this film a lot more than I did. I do like it because I had it in my honorable mentions, but it's a really good film, and it took place in it came out in 2005, and it was directed by Nico Caro. So that's North Country. That was Jeff's number one choice. My number one choice, as Andrew alluded to, is Monster. Same as Billy. I absolutely grew up. I was a teenager while the events of Monster were taking place. Eileen Wuornos was a real life person. She did the things that were portrayed in this movie by Charlize Theron. I've been to the Little Dive Biker Bar in Port Orange, Florida, where this movie pretty much took place. It also takes place off the highway called I-95 in Florida. It goes all the ways up the coast from Miami, all the way up north to where Andrew lives. But it goes right by Daytona Beach, Florida, where she was suckering these men in. She had this ability to act like she was their friend, and then when they said something or did something to her, she was like, you know what, I'm going to kill you. And that's what she did. She just felt like she was being unjustly treated by men, and women as a whole were being unjustly treated by men. So her way of doing it or getting, well, let's kill these men, you know. And Scott Wilson, if you don't know who Scott Wilson is a character in The Walking Dead. He's the animal doctor in season 2 who ends up losing his leg later on in The Walking Dead. He has an interesting role in this film where she kind of feels sympathetic for him and he has sympathy for her. They become friends, but eventually he gets killed just like all the other men in the film. Charlize Theron absolutely loses herself in the role of Eileen Wuornos. As Billy said, he didn't even realize it was Charlize Theron as the character when he first saw the movie. Of course, I knew it was her because I knew the character of Eileen Wuornos was an ugly woman. So they were going to have someone like a Charlize Theron get all this makeup and the fat suit and all this stuff and portray this character. And Patty Jenkins, obviously, this is the film until now that she is most known for directing, and it was on set. They directed this live in Daytona in the real places, I-95, in this little dive biker bar in Port Orange, Florida. And Christina Ricci was her lover, and she, you know, they had a kind of a love-hate relationship. Sometimes she wanted her around, and sometimes she didn't. They didn't want her around, but obviously this is the performance of her career that she's most known for. So I had to have it. Plus, I actually lived through these events. It was on the news. I actually was around while this was taking place in Daytona in Port Orange, Florida, which is 25-minute drive west of where I live in DeLand, Florida. So this really hit home for me that this is going on in the same county where I live, literally in the same county, 25 minutes away from where I live. So it really resonates with me a lot that that she portrayed this character, and she portrayed it to a fact where she ends up winning an Oscar for Best Actress. And she's done a lot of different kinds of roles since then and before then. And I'm looking forward to seeing more great roles from Charlize Theron. Obviously, Atomic Blonde, I really enjoyed that. So we'll see what she has in store for us down the line. Andrew, do you have any honorable mentions?
Yeah, there's a couple, you know, all the things that you guys mentioned that I didn't, The Italian Job, North Country, Prometheus, I think is kind of underrated for her. Also, you know, Billy said, you know, she has a tendency to be great even in an okay/bad movie. Snow White and the Huntsman, I think she's kind of good in that. Granted, the movie is not good, but I think her as this evil queen, she pulls it off very, very well. Not so much in the second one. That's a different story for a different time. But another film, Hancock, that was done by Peter Berg, I think is kind of an underrated movie. It's okay. It's not great. It's starring Will Smith and Jason Bateman, I believe. But I'm pretty sure there are a few others that Dan or Billy will mention.
Billy, do you have to mention?
Yes, I do. One was one I forgot she was in as well, same as Devil's Advocate, was The Legend of Bagger Vance. Yeah, she's in that movie. And Aeon Flux. That movie. The problem was not Charlize Theron. The problem was basically everything else. But you know what? And there's a lot of movies that are like that. A Million Ways to Die in the West isn't good. She's great. I mean, Charlize Theron, she fully commits to something. I also actually enjoy the remake of Mighty Joe Young, which she and Bill Paxton were in that movie as well. And that's one of the oldest memories I have is seeing like a trailer for Mighty Joe Young attached to a VHS copy of, I forget what it was, but it was I didn't even know it was a remake. So I learned that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, and in Monster, she actually does a good, I think she does an all right Florida accent because she is from South Africa. So that is a very it's a very hard accent to do, but it's a very recognizable one once you know the dialect of it. So not every actress can or any actor can do any dialogue well. Look at Keanu Reeves and Bram Stoker's Dracula, for example. But yeah, I am so glad I got to talk about Charlize Theron, and let's hear what you got for honorable mentions.
Well, I actually saw a movie today that I didn't even know she was in until I looked up her filmography, and I watched it today. She is in these like time lapse scenes in The Road, where it's Viggo Mortensen and Cody Smith McPhee throughout the whole movie. But then you see Viggo Mortensen's dream sequences, and she's in these dream sequences because she was his wife, and she gives birth to Cody Smith McPhee's character. And so I had no clue that she was the wife of Viggo Mortensen in the film. So that was interesting. And she has a lot of emotion in a very small role in these dream sequences. Also, a movie that came out last year where I really fought hard. I really was thinking about putting it on my list, and I'm, thinking back, maybe I should have. And that's Kubo and the Two Strings, where she plays Monkey. And this is the first time she's ever been a voice in an animated film, I believe. And her and Matthew McConaughey are great in it with this little boy. And this is all Leica. It's beautiful, beautiful film. If Zootopia didn't come out, I'm sure that Kubo would have won the Oscar. A lot of people thought it was going to win anyway. Yeah, so she plays Monkey in Kubo and the Two Strings. And I had The Road, and like I said, I had North Country on my list as well. So that is the show. Andrew, where can you be found?
You can find me on Twitter at Cabzilla06, as well as my YouTube channel, Cabzilla Productions.
And Billy?
You can find me on Twitter at BBusterBill. All the B's are capitalized. You can just find me on Instagram, BlockbusterBill. The B's are not capitalized. I do not have a YouTube channel. And you can just find me usually on Twitter and just say hi. I'm generally a fan of a lot of people, and I tend to support a lot of people as well. So yeah, I'm open to meeting new people.
And back in the day, I met commenting and doing all that kind of stuff. I reached out to Billy years ago. It seems like yesterday, but it was years ago. Him and I. He was just a young. Still a young. But we knew each other for a while. He's a good guy. And he's a good guy as well. You can find me at Dan Skip Allen on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. Also, I do a show called The 52 Must-See Movies and Why They Matter, where I have these two gentlemen have been on a few episodes. There's a couple good episodes with Andrew and Steven coming up over the next couple weeks. So stay tuned. That's a series based on this book called The Essentials. Very, very good series if you're a classic movie fan. And I also do a show called The Best Damn Movie Show with my co-host Vincent Laspada. We haven't done a show in a couple weeks. Hopefully this week we will be doing an episode of that podcast. So for Billy and Andrew and Jeff, who you can find him under Sutter Keeley 24 or on Instagram. I know he's on Instagram as Sutter Keeley 24, I believe. And obviously you can find him under Jeff. I can't pronounce his last name. So Jeff, I'm sorry, buddy, if you're watching, but I did tell him your Instagram. So for these guys, good night.